Anyway, hey, it's another day where we are alive, and so is public health. Welcome to Better Together. So today, our topic is recovery housing. I want to start with something that I think a lot of us feel, but we don't always say out loud. Most people, if you ask them, they support recovery. They support treatment, and they support people getting a second chance. And at the same time, conversations can get a lot more complicated when it turns into a specific place on a specific street in a specific neighborhood. That tension shows up in a lot of ways, but it often gets summarized as not in my backyard, or NIMB, which as acronyms go is at least honest. Nobody's calling it PEFSA. Please establish facilities somewhere adjacent. And I think it's worth slowing down here for a second. We don't want to dismiss this argument, but we want to actually understand it, because usually the reaction of NIMB isn't coming out of nowhere. It's tied to real questions. Is this safe? What does this mean for my neighborhood? Are we doing this the right way? See, they're reasonable questions. They deserve real answers, not a redirect to some FAQ. They deserve real answers. So in a few minutes, we'll talk to someone who runs a recovery home right here in Laconia and has navigated these concerns firsthand. But before we get there, I wanted to share a few points I found particularly interesting while preparing for this conversation. See, I did my research. I'm just as surprised as you are, but I did my research. And just to give us a shared starting point, first, what are we even talking about? When people hear recovery housing, they often picture a lot of different things. And some of those things they're picturing are not what it is. Certified recovery homes are actually pretty structured environments. They're sober living spaces. They have rules, curfews, accountability, regular drug testing. They're designed to be stable, predictable places for people who are trying to rebuild their lives. So one thing that stood out to me, when a lot of people have fears that these are places where people are just getting high, they're designed to be the exact opposite. It's kind of like being afraid that your library is going to be loud. Let's talk about who lives there as my second point. It's easy to think of other people. It's the other people living there. But when you look at the data from one local program, Reverence House here in Laconia, the one we're talking about today, you get a different picture. Most residents are adults in their 30s and 40s. Many have experienced trauma, mental health challenges, or homelessness, and a majority have kids. So, they're people, which doesn't make the conversation any simpler. But it does, however, make it more human. And then there are a couple data points that really have stuck with me as I've been learning about what Reverence House here in Laconia does. First off, employment. When people enter this program, about 12% are working, but by the time they leave, it's around 70%. I'm going to resist the urge to editorialize that number and just let it exist for a second. Let's talk about outcomes. Roughly 3 out of the 4 people leave sober and on a path to recovery. 3. This one surprised me the most. Over 2 years, Reverence House was associated with an estimated $4.5 million in avoided costs to our community. That's calculated using CDC and White House methodology based on the daily cost that substance use disorder imposes through healthcare, incarceration, lost productivity, and emergency services. That is $4.5 million from one organization in one mid-sized New Hampshire city in 2 years. I want to be clear that I read that number several times only because I thought I was misreading it. And trust me, I was not misreading it. That's one program. One snapshot. It's a helpful lens because it starts to reframe the conversation from whether communities are impacted to how they're impacted and by what. So when people raise concerns about safety, property values, neighborhood fit, those are important to talk through. But it's also worth asking, compared to what? Because the alternative isn't no recovery housing and also no addiction. The alternative is just untreated addiction with fewer resources and more emergency room visits. If recovery housing is something we want to support, and most people say they do, then where does that support actually live? Because it can't just be an idea. It has to exist somewhere real, most likely in someone's backyard. And that's where these conversations tend to get difficult and also where they matter the most. And that's where I want to start today. And that's why we brought in Adam. My guest today is the founder of Reverence House in Laconia. He has navigated the full experience of trying to open and operate a recovery house in a community where not everyone wanted it there. He has sat in uncomfortable meetings, answered questions rooted in fear rather than fact, and they just kept going anyway. Adam Moulton is the kind of person who tracks every data point. He knows every resident's stories, and he's going to tell you both with equal frankness. In fact, he emailed me most of the data we use today. He is also someone who, when a kid across the street sets up at that lemonade stand, he makes sure the whole house goes and buys some. Adam, welcome to Better Together.
Very nice to see you.
Do you want to just start off telling us a little bit about Reverence House, yourself, kind of everything that you're doing?
Sure. So the Reverence House is a men's recovery home here in Laconia. I opened the first one back in 2019, so just prior to COVID. I personally grew up around here. I always knew that I wanted to come back and open up recovery homes. I had to first get my own life together. So I did that. I went out to California. I went to school, became a clinician. Then after a few years, I love it here. I really missed home. I missed my family, and I felt that I was in a position where I was sustainable and stable, most importantly. And so I came back, moved back in 2019, opened up the first Reverence House. It was the first ever certified home in the state of New Hampshire, so that was very important to me. And then continued to expand. So I have actually 3 now. I meet multiple levels. So there's technically 4 levels in sober living. I have 1, 2, and 3. I don't have 4 just because that's licensed and, more clinical stuff, which I don't do. But 1, 2, and 3. So there's a solid setup structure. And that's what we do.
What is kind of what are those different levels? What are 1, 2, 3?
So this is actually something that isn't even very well understood in the community. So I'm happy that you asked. Because it's actually a huge problem, is people not understanding these levels. So level 3, very high structure, very high accountability. It's generally for, like, if you think about the highest 4, be the highest structure. You're in a clinical setting, you're licensed, yada, yada. You get out of that. So maybe you get out of prison, you get out of jail, you get out of treatment, you get out of, detox. Then ideally you're going into a level 3, again, very high structure, 1 step down from level 4, and then you just kind of keep following that out until they end up in a level 1, which is actually really no structure. There's no leadership. It's a self-governing home. Oxford houses kind of run like this.
Okay.
The only thing, at least in my level 1s, they have to do is pass UAs.
Okay.
That's it.
Yeah.
If they don't want to do AA anymore, they don't want to get a sponsor, they get all the rope in the world. And that's kind of the point of a level 1. It's the last step before we push you out. The people in my level 2s and level 1s all have over a year of recovery. So they're very, they're pretty sustainable there. They're just kind of trying to figure out some of the other aspects of life at that point, but they're not so acutely stressed in that scenario.
How are you kind of like going through, and how do you know when someone's ready to take that step down?
Sure. That's a fantastic question. And every single person is going to answer this very differently. Mm-hmm. So again, I do things differently. The majority of the homes in the state are actually level 2.
Okay.
So most of our homes are level 2. And this is going back to the problem that I said, which is what you have caseworkers, you have individual, people who work inside of the treatments and jails. They don't understand the level system. So what they're doing is just trying to place somebody into a bed, which is problematic.
Yeah.
Because if you're placing somebody who should be in a level 3
in a level 2
or a level 1, you're running into huge problems. Because again, a person who has a month of sobriety, they're still, they're really
not ready to be self-governing.
Post-acute withdrawals. No, they're in level 2 has a leader, but again, in my opinion, they're also they're not ready for level 2. Mm-hmm. So level 2 in my house, like for instance, you have to be financially stable.
Okay.
So we here in the state of New Hampshire fund people who are in recovery homes, generally a month. So the first month is paid for. That gives them time to get a job, gives them time to get their first paycheck, and then they can start paying their way. So unlike what a lot of people think, insurance doesn't cover recovery homes. The individuals living in recovery homes are paying for their recovery.
Yeah.
But my level 2 and level 1, I refuse funding. So I will not accept funding at either of those houses. Because again, if you need funding in my level 2 or level 1 house, you're indicating to me you should be in my level 3.
Yeah.
Right?
Because that's one of those ground rules. Yeah.
It's one of the kind of check boxes that need to be checked. You need to be financially stable. If you can't pay your housing fees, then you need to go back to the level 3 where those are some of the challenges of level 3 is, I still am trying to figure out how to budget my money. I still, spend recklessly, and I don't have a great relationship with money. Like,
Yeah.
that's a level 3 thing. So what you end up with is a state full of level 2s. There's really no incentive for a homeowner to run a level 3 because they cost the same.
Oh, okay.
But a level 3, there's a lot more work. So I work a lot harder at my level 3 homes than I do my level 2. So it's problematic, but it's case by case. Everybody is different. Recovery time takes that's one of the things that I'll look for on whether or not I'm ready to send somebody over to the level 2. Certainly financial stability, they got to work. They already have a sponsor. They got to be, fairly deep in the steps, if not finish the steps. So yeah, those are some of the things.
Yeah. How often is there a case where someone might go backtrack?
It's happened one time.
Only one time.
Happened one time. And it was actually a level 1 to a level 3.
Oh, okay.
So he made it into the level 1. And then the individual in question actually lost his job. And the way in which that they went about it is the reason for the transfer back. But I mean, ultimately it was a situation where, again, the individual couldn't pay housing fees anymore because the job had been lost, and financial stability is, especially in level 1, at that point, level 1, there should never be any question about financial readiness. So unfortunately, that's what we had to do.
Okay. So that's one time in how many?
So that's now been open for almost 2 years. And by the way, in that 2 years, we have had one reoccurrence.
That's super impressive.
So one relapse.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
That is absolutely crazy.
As a person who's lived in a lot of sober, like I've been in this community, like I'll have 10 years of recovery in a week and a half. And
congratulations.
Thank you very much. And then I spent 10 years in and out of, treatments and sober living. So I'm very familiar with, like it really is. It's an impressive feat to go that long and only have one reoccurrence.
Yeah.
In the house. So
how does that data look statewide? Do you know off the top of your head?
What specific data?
I guess the data of people backtracking in housing.
Oh, that I don't know, because there's really very few organizations that actually have the full kit and caboodle. Like most places are only running level 2s. They don't have a level 3. They don't have a level 1.
It's just 2.
It's just level 2. And then you got people who are just getting funneled into the level 2s from treatment centers, jails, prisons, where again, in my opinion, they should be getting funneled into the level 3s, because why even have a level 3 at that point if you're not going to be following the step down structure, which is what it is. Levels 1 through 4, it's all it is. It's a step down structure. You start at 4, you work your way down to 1, and then you're out in the real world.
Okay. How long does that process fully take usually?
Great question, because everybody asks this. How long do I stay in sober living? It's funny because I'll speak for myself. I spent well over a decade ruining my life. And then I went to treatment, and then I'm like, okay, when am I done? And when do I carry on with my life? And I start doing all of these things. And it's like, well, knowing what I know now, you spent well over a decade destroying your life. It's going to take a while to rebuild it. This isn't a month or two process.
Yeah.
So I always suggest, because I do work as a clinician as well, outside of the state of New Hampshire, not in the state of New Hampshire. And I'll have clients who will always come to me and say, how long do I stay in sober? Because I work for a treatment center. And I always say, well, that is case by case completely, but why don't we start with a year and then we will discuss it.
Okay.
So there's this open-ended nature of that type of question. But I always try and suggest people start at a year. Start at a year. And that upsets people because what they want to hear is 1 month, 2 months, 3 months.
Yeah.
And I vehemently oppose that model. In fact, my data supports that once people stay for 9 months, there's a massive drop-off in reoccurrence percentages. So the people who are staying longer than 9 months, their chances of continuing post sober living skyrocket.
Yeah.
In comparison to the individuals who stay less than that. So
yeah.
There is something about, I don't know if it's a year, getting a year in recovery. Most people are coming into my house with like a month and a half, 2 months of sobriety.
Okay.
So you're adding on another 9, you're getting around that year mark. But yeah, I mean, I have an individual in my level 1 now. They have multiple years. Get a lot of individuals. They don't have family. They don't have things like that. So this becomes their family. And,
I love that.
That's kind of part of it. But everybody's different. Everybody is different. start at a year and we'll discuss. I mean, it's similar to like relationships. You hear this a lot in like AA and the recovery communities. Don't get into a relationship for the first year, which I find to be absurdly. I don't think that that's good advice, because I know many people who are not in recovery who have no business being in relationships. So there's this kind of weird thing with timelines. And when you give somebody like myself a timeline who has a month or two of sobriety, I'm kind of going to anchor myself to this timeline.
Yeah.
It becomes like almost a sentence. It's like, okay, a year and then I'm done. So it's better to keep them very open-ended. We'll start at a year and then we'll discuss.
Yeah.
But yeah, some people 6 months, some people 3 years.
I mean, I think that's so. I mean, it's so accurate to the recovery process. It's
Sure.
like every single person is different. I've known people in circles that are, they're getting up near like the 5-6 year mark of recovery, and then they relapse or something will happen. And then there's also people who relapse at, 6 months to a year. Like it is very individualized to every single person. Like your journey is your journey.
Yeah.
It's just that. So kind of transitioning a little bit away from what Reverence House does to more of like the community involvement around it. I don't know if involvement's the right word, but reaction to it. But
yeah, that's a good word.
What's your most common argument that you hear from people who oppose the recovery housing being in their neighborhood?
Perfect. So this would be NIMB, not in my backyard.
Exactly.
And just speaking a little about like NIMB, YIMB type stuff. So, yeah, there's plenty. I mean, actually, when I first opened my home back in 2019, the neighbor of the house within 2 weeks was down at the city hall trying to get me shut down.
My gosh.
Literally within
2 weeks.
2 weeks he was, and I actually am right. I'm placed right next to a women's recovery home, actually. So he was down there about both of us. It wasn't just mine, but and his argument. Luckily, I happened to know somebody who was behind him in line, and he called me right after. He's like, there's this guy that's down at the city hall, like trying to get you shut down. His argument was that it lowered property value. So, his whole argument was like, you get all these treatment centers popping up on the street and, my property value is going down. So that's one argument. Another argument is crime. The idea that sober livings bring crime into the areas, which when you really think about that critically, it doesn't make a ton of sense. And maybe let me add one caveat, which is a good recovery home, a certified recovery home. I don't house criminals. I want them in jail just like everybody else in the society does. I don't enable criminal behavior. I don't want criminal behavior. Like I said, I refuse to house criminal behavior, people who are engaging in criminal behavior. I don't care if you steal a candy bar from Cumbies down the street, you're gone. Yeah. Like that's theft. You can't do that. That's not recovery. That's it's you trying to be clean and live dirty, which doesn't work. So crime, property values, and a lot of people with like kids, which I guess kind of ties into all of that. But yeah, I mean, you got guys that like look like me. They get tattoos all over themselves, and it can be somewhat intimidating. We had a daycare at one point that was next to one of my houses that lasted like 6 months, and then they moved. And it's a shame because the guys in my house, like there's another family that lives right across the street, and there's this kid who was always out there and he's trying to sell stuff, whether it be lemonade, whether they were doing maple syrup one time. And like all the guys from my house, they go over there and they go buy stuff, not because they actually want lemonade, but because they're humans just like all of us. And they enjoy seeing a child who's put in all of this work for a lemonade stand to be rewarded for that. Like, so when you really like communicate with these people, it's like, oh yeah, they're not like criminals. Like they're just normal people who are struggling. Yes. But
as we all do,
of course, like all of, some of the most resilient, smart, just impressive people that I've ever met in my life are those who are in recovery, most of which have no idea that they even possess these qualities in themselves. So again, a part of what I'm doing is helping them see these things in themselves, build confidence, build self-esteem. But yeah, I mean, those are a lot of the NIMBY issues. It's they think that a house full of using criminals just moved in next to them.
Yeah.
Which is absurd because every person in my home gets UA'd 3 times per week.
Okay.
Which is basically impossible to get around at that point. Like you're going to get caught. And if there's a failed UA, we immediately escalate care. So we immediately get them into a higher level.
That was going to be one of my next questions.
Right. Like this is how it's done. So we don't like kick them out. Oh, good luck to you.
Yeah.
And again, because that would be problematic. Then the individuals, the NIMB individuals, they have an argument.
Exactly. You're just kicking out someone who's struggling. And
absolutely. And now they're walking around my community homeless who are actively using and they're engaging in criminal behavior. Like these are the arguments. And you know, they're arguments that are coming from a place of ignorance, not, and I'm not saying that in a mean way. I'm saying that in a way of which, like, they just don't really get it.
Yeah.
Like, they don't understand the field. Just
almost like naivety.
Yeah, exactly. That's a much better word. Just like I'm not an electrician. Like,
yeah.
You know, I would be probably asking and making some absurd, you know, arguments against a trade or a job that I was unfamiliar with. But because this is people and it's our communities, everything is you know, everything just blows up. We actually have, I have a house that's borders a lawyer's office. We first moved in there. They were very unhappy. And they're actually property lawyers, which is funny because we share a driveway. So, you know, and they were very unhappy. This past Thanksgiving, it literally almost like brings tears to my eyes because it's just incredible. Like this past Thanksgiving, now, mind you, it's probably been about a year at this point since we had moved in, 1.5 years or so.
Okay.
They supplied the entire Thanksgiving for the guys at the house.
Oh my gosh.
So it was just this complete shift in perspective. They went from NIMB to YIMB.
Yeah.
Right? Because they share a driveway. At first, they were like, oh, no, this is terrible. Like, we have, you know, again, a bunch of drug addicts who are moving in next to us. Like, that's the general tone. And then when they realize that they're like fantastic people that are working and they pay their taxes and they're productive individuals, then it's like, oh, you know, like they're one of my residents would carry their trash out to the end of, you know, so it's like we look for any opportunity to give back.
Yeah.
During the summertime, Saturdays, one Saturday out of the month, we go walk around the entire city and we clean up trash. Like that is a requirement. If you don't want to do that, you can't live at my house. So recovery homes actually give back a ton to communities, but because there is so much NIMBY, it can sometimes get drowned out.
Oh yeah.
But yeah, those would be a lot of the, it was a long-winded way of answering
No.
the question about NIMBY is it's crime, lowering of property values. And yeah, I mean, those are the two main issues. Another one is bringing in people from out of towns, out of cities. That actually is a problem.
Yeah.
I don't mind acknowledging that that's a potential issue. But again, it gets handled well when you have homes that are escalating care.
Yeah.
You know, you don't end up with a bunch of people from Lawrence or Manchester who are now homeless here in Laconia. Like that would be problematic. So,
yeah.
You know, the recovery home community, we understand this and we do what we can to mitigate a lot of that.
1000%. Do you want to just kind of touch a little bit on the property value argument that a lot of NIMBY people have? I think you touched wonderfully on the crime and just the community, I don't know, safety and participation feel. But there is this idea of property value, of how do you usually come at those discussions?
So it's difficult because I'm not aware of a one-to-one comparison of that. But what I am aware of are these things called pallet shelters. So pallet shelters was it's a brilliant company. I forget where they're out of. I want to say closer to the West Coast, but I could be way off there. It might be more central. They wanted to try and help the homelessness crisis. So they built a terrible, in my opinion, word, pallet shelters. It comes off as pallets.
Yeah.
Not at all what they
That's what I was thinking.
Exactly. I don't know why they named it that. But anyways, brilliant little pop-up shelters. And, you know, ultimately you place them in communities that are struggling with homelessness issues.
Okay.
So what they have found is that the properties within, I forgot the mile radius of these pallet shelters, both property values and crime, by the way. Property values would go up, crime would go down. So these pallet shelters in the communities within these pallet shelters, actually we're lowering crime rate. And again, we're actually elevating property values. So is that a one-to-one comparison to sober livings? I don't know, probably not, but it at least kind of spits in the face of sober living's lower property value, because there's absolutely zero evidence to support that. None. In fact, like, you know, if like a zombie apocalypse were to happen, like I would suggest everybody on my street to go to my house. There's got 13 guys in there.
Oh,
who are like, you know, like they'd be willing to die for you. Like that's, you know, so it's all kind of funny when I think about it. But yeah, that's, I don't have any other actual data to support other than what pallet shelters have done. Pallet shelters has done a really great job at collecting data on their thing. I could probably make an argument that if you have a community of individuals who were homeless and all of those numbers are going down and the good numbers are going up, then it would probably translate really well to recovery homes. And again, like, you got 13 people in one of my houses, all of which are law-abiding citizens, all of which are passing urinalysis tests, all of which are working, paying taxes. That's the reality.
Yeah.
It's not a house where people just sit around and like do nothing. I don't, at least in my, I don't allow that. So I can't speak for the other houses, but.
Throughout all the opposition, have you ever like questioned whether or not it was even worth it to just keep going to do with this?
Yes, I do. Actually, fairly often. I've been very critical of the state of New Hampshire and how we treat substance use and mental health. I find us to just be terrible. And I actually do believe that I can say that because I've worked in this field in other states and I continue to. So I've worked in this field in California. I've worked in this field currently in Tennessee. I've seen clients in North Carolina and Oregon. So, and again, I went to treatment 10 years ago with brilliant individuals, many of which are now opening up treatment centers in Idaho, things of that. So they don't experience many of the things that we experience here. So yeah, like to answer your question, I do. Unfortunately, I do kind of question, like, what am I doing? You know, of course I'm helping people and that feeds my recovery and it's a requirement for me, but I could do that in a nonprofit. I could do that in 1,000 different ways. So yeah, it's challenging. It's a very challenging field to work in. It's incredibly challenging because like anything else, it's like, you know, a lot of the people who are up top making policy changes actually don't know what's going on. Yeah. They're not at the houses. They don't live at the houses. They've never lived at a sober living. So they're creating policy on things that they just don't understand how it plays out in real time. There's a lot of like ways that we envision it should play out, but when you have 13 people living under the same roof at one time, it almost never plays out that way. You have lots of different things going on. So yeah, it's very challenging. And in fact, the most challenging parts of my job are not the residents; it's the professionals. It's the actual it's the policymakers. It's the state. It's DHHS. It's the people. You know, which again kind of spits in the face of I think what a lot of people would think, like, oh man, working with that demographic must be so challenging, and it is very challenging. But it's also more rewarding than I could ever imagine. My gripes are not with them. My gripes are with the professionals.
It's with the people who haven't been on the groundwork. You know? A lot of times I feel like a lot of the policy, a lot of the decision making happens from people who've never been through recovery. They've never.
And even if they have been through recovery. You've never lived in a sober living, never even walked inside of one, never spent the night at one. Recovery and treatment is apples and oranges to recovery and sober living. When I was in treatment, we actually used to call sober living the hidden modality because it's not advertised as a modality, as like addiction education, a process group, but it should be because I'll speak for myself. The people who lived in sober living with me did more for me than any clinician ever could have. not from like a trauma processing standpoint, but from a human recovery standpoint. Like,
which is a huge part of it.
Yeah. So, and again, like the way that things play out in sober living is not how they play out in treatment. Like, it's just not. And you can create all the policy in the world to try and make it that way, but it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
So yeah, that would be my challenge. It's the professionals.
Yeah. If someone is listening to this thinking about recovery, or they're maybe in recovery, but maybe they are interested in starting to look into recovery housing, or they're just looking at, where do I start my recovery journey in general?
Sure.
What are some of the things you might say from just from either a personal perspective or the Reverence House perspective? I know that Reverence House requires referrals, correct? So it's not just something where someone...
Technically, somebody could just call me. I mean, it's
Okay.
actually fairly regular. Somebody would call me and say, I just got released from Belknap County Jail. This happens all the time.
Huh.
All the time. Belknap County Jail, I don't know what it is with these jails, that they just release people. And there's no... so I'll have a guy who will call me back. I just got out of court. They just released me from jail and I have nowhere to go.
Yeah.
Do you have a bed? And it's like,
they didn't give you any time.
No, there's nothing. And again, there's like I'm homeless tonight. Do you have a bed? So when I say like that, we have a lot of problems with how the state does things. This is just one of many. You can't do that.
Yeah.
You can't just do that. You can't just discharge somebody from a DOC. And again, like if the community wants to get pissed off about something, that's what they should be pissed off.
100%.
Not at the sober living who takes that guy and houses them.
Yeah.
Get pissed at the systems who are just they're just discharging them where nowhere to go when we have a massive homelessness problem. So I don't mean to cut you off, but
no,
it's not necessarily a referral system. It's a this person needs housing now. Can you help?
Yeah.
And then everybody puts their hands and we all jump forward to try and get this person housing immediately.
What does that usually like? How long does it?
I could get a guy in my house within 20 minutes.
Okay.
Yeah. They would have to fill out an application. We do a quick phone screening where it's just, I'm making it abundantly clear what is expected.
Yeah. And
if they're about that and that's what they want, okay, let's get you in here.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what is the conversation that you would have to someone who's starting to have some of those debates of recovery, starting recovery journey, trying to figure out like, what is my next step? What is the best first step even?
So that is going to be, again, completely contingent on where that person is. If they're actively using, detox. You need to stay.
Yeah.
It's like that's the first thing that needs to happen. You need to get, the drugs out of your system and you need to stop using and you need to get into a safe place where you can't do that. But I also find that the recovery community oftentimes has the wrong finish line. There's a lot of AA has this problem as well, actually. There's a lot of times like the expectation of like sobriety is the goal. Sobriety is the point. And sobriety is not the point. It's just not. Sobriety is a box that has to be checked in order to get the life that you want to receive. So like at my house, people passing UAs isn't securing their bed at my house.
Oh, okay.
This is recovery. So I say this to everybody. This is not my words, by the way, but drugs and alcohol are not your problem. They're your attempt at a solution to a problem. So removing drugs and alcohol from a dysfunctional person, all that does is now you have a dysfunctional person who's not using drugs and alcohol.
Yeah.
So that needs to be the very first understanding of people who are trying to get recovery, is that this is different than how it's often phrased, which is like, you got to stop doing drugs. We'll get you sober. You get your 90-day chip, and that's great. I mean, I got chips too. Like, I'm not suggesting that that's not important. What I'm suggesting is that it's not the point. You need to build a life that's not worth sacrificing. And if I continue to behave and engage in dysfunctional behavior, criminal behavior, and I'm not using drugs and alcohol, that's not impressive. At least to me and my houses.
Yeah.
It's not impressive. You know, we need to be challenging ourselves every single day to be better than the day we were before. And when you build a life that's not worth sacrificing, drugs and alcohol aren't even options for you anymore. You become obsessed in a lot of ways with creating this new version of who you are. You know, learning new things about yourself. I mean, the amount of things that I've learned about myself and my recovery is wild.
Yeah.
Things that I can do that I had no idea that I could do. That's recovery.
Yeah.
Not, oh, I just made it through today sober. Which again is like that's a big thing in AA. And again, that's for some people, that is what it needs.
Yeah.
To be. And for early on in my recovery, that's what it was for me too. Like, I just need to get through the day. And that stops working after a while. Because we as humans want more. Like, we crave more for ourselves. Like, we want a better life. We want a better than just like, yeah, we made it through today sober. It's like, okay, but were you rude to everybody you came across because you're miserable? That's not impressive. It's not. Like, sure, I'm sure you're happy, your family is happy that you're sober and you're not using drugs and alcohol, and what you're doing is certainly better than using drugs and alcohol, but this isn't the goal.
Yeah.
The goal is for you, like, hold the door open for the people behind you. Be an available father, be an available son, brother, partner, whatever that may be. You know, go to work, be reliable, be emotionally available, pay your taxes, like be a good human. Like, that's the point.
Yeah.
That's recovery. Those are all the things that we were missing in our active addiction. The idea that you just stop using drugs and alcohol and your life kind of falls into place is, I think, one of the bigger misconceptions about recovery.
Yeah.
So I really wish that was pushed more, where it's like, listen, being sober that's just a box that needs to be checked. And instead, I think there's been so much weight put into the idea of sobriety. And I have been one that will always say recovery is greater than sobriety as a way to really separate those two.
Yeah.
It's because they're fundamentally different. A dry drunk is a person in sobriety, but that's not, I don't house dry drunks. I refuse to house dry drunks because, again, it's like you didn't fix any of your problems.
Yeah.
You didn't fix any of the underlying issues that drove you to use drugs and alcohol to begin with.
No,
all you did was remove the drugs and the alcohol, and you're miserable.
And that can even lead to, at some points, starting to replace with a different habit.
Oh, absolutely.
Right.
Which, by the way, most people do. Like, for instance, I would be lying to you if I said I wasn't still addicted to things. The only difference is they're adaptive.
Yeah.
They're helpful. They drive my life forward. They don't create consequences in my life that, like, my relationships aren't falling apart because of these things. So, like, everybody's addicted to 99% of people, maybe not, but most people are addicted to, for instance, their phone. It's a very reflexive thing for people to take out their phone, not even having any goal and plan other than to escape for that second. So there's so much of these behaviors that I think people engage in consistently and regularly that are absolutely addictive and compulsive.
Oh, yeah.
Mine was just needles in my arm and crack pipes in my mouth. So it was very obvious to everybody around, like, this can't happen. Like, this is a problem. We need to fix this. But if I was the guy who worked 90 hours a week, I would be praised.
Yeah.
I would be getting raises. I would be getting, I'd be ranking up in the company. My family would certainly miss me. But
some of those underlying relational issues are almost equivalent.
Sure.
I mean, you could still be considered a distant father.
Sure.
Right?
Absolutely.
Like,
kids who wish that their father was around more. I don't care that you put food on my table. I wanted a dad.
Yeah.
Right? Like, and I think that even some of these, like, just making that comment, like, some of these cultural norms that exist within our systems, I think, are counterproductive in many different ways. The 90-hour work week is praised. We have a country that, loves the economy and just loves, like that. So you get rewarded for a lot of addictions.
Yeah.
Mine certainly didn't get rewarded, and it shouldn't have been. It would have killed me if it got rewarded. So, yeah.
I think that's a very, I don't know, it's an interesting turn on the conversation for sure I think, and who knows if we'll use this, but just to, like, pick your brain about, of, like, at what point do we need to start talking about, like, at what point do addictions need to be addressed? And what a point do addictions be considered harmless, right? Like,
Sure.
at what point do we start talking about, like, a 90-hour work week, our phones, social media, right? At what point do we start considering those just as bad as any drug or alcohol?
I think we already should have. I mean, you look at social media specifically, like the depression rates, the suicide rates of teens, pre-COVID, by the way, higher than it's ever been. Yet we prescribe more SSRIs than we ever have. So, and again, like, is this a social media problem? Well, I'm not suggesting that it's all a social media problem, but social media certainly has played a role in the comparison systems that exist within humans. I think that we're wired to compare to an extent, but comparisons are also the root of every single self-defeating belief that exists. If you were the only person to ever exist, nobody before you, nobody after you, you would have no self-defeating beliefs. There would be nothing that you could have compared yourself to. You would just be you. So there's this, the comparisons that social media breeds, especially for young children, specifically girls, I think. I could not imagine being in middle school right now, being in high school right now. Like that is actually fairly scary to me to think about. And I got nephews and nieces who are going through school now. So like I see how a lot of that plays out. But I mean, ultimately an addiction that I think is like, leave it alone, is again, if it's not creating consequences in your life. I think that's it's important. Like if this behavior that you are engaging in creates consequences to either you or other people who are in your life, it's something you need to take a look at. So again, the 90-hour work week, chances are that's affecting somebody, right? Like it's either your wife, because she would love to have a father who was home more, or the kids who would love to see their dad more. But there's also, like, I could imagine the athlete who's addicted to his process. Do I think that's a poor addiction, or an addiction that would need to get worked out? No, absolutely not. That's an addiction that has served this individual very well throughout his life. I build software, so I do a lot of designing online. I would be lying to you if I said that when I am engaging in that process, I don't feel I don't want to get technical, but it's dopamine. The dopamine systems are what really feed addiction. And dopamine is all about motivating and reinforcing behavior. So if I experience a thing that I'm engaging with where I'm like, ooh, I want more of this, that is a really nice insight into, this can be a road for you that could potentially be problematic. But in the sense that I'm talking about, really the only time that would be problematic is like when my wife comes home and she tries to engage with me and I'm just still sitting there like, then of course that's problematic. But if I can disengage with it, so that's an important word, disengage. If I can disengage with the thing that is really engaging me, you're probably doing okay.
Yeah.
Probably doing all right. But yeah, I mean, it's interesting. Nicotine, gambling. Gambling is a very sinister addiction because it's the only addiction that I'm aware of that promises you a beautiful future. Heroin doesn't do that. I never did heroin and was like, yeah, this is going to make my life better. But gambling, there's always that, no, this could make me a millionaire. This could buy me a mansion. This could, like, so it's the only thing that promises a future that is grandiose and absurd.
But then the reality comes in.
Oh, and the reality, and actually the data support that there's when people actually start losing. So we do this slot machines. A lot of people have been studied on slot machines. But people start losing and they actually start getting dopamine from losing. So they actually become engaged with the losing process of it. They can win and it's like, yeah, whatever. And they just keep tapping the button. It's like seeing people in a trance. It's actually very, concerning. But yeah, there's so many addictions out there. There's just some that are accepted and some that aren't. Yeah. The ones that are accepted, those are harder to find. You know what I mean? And I'm sure everybody probably engages in something that maybe they're not addicted to, but Pretty close.
100%.
I have a very addictive personality. Just because I stopped doing drugs and alcohol doesn't mean that went away.
Yeah.
That's not how it works.
No longer, addiction doesn't matter anymore.
It wasn't the drug and alcohol. Like I said, it wasn't that, drugs and alcohol wasn't the problem. It was my attempt at a solution to a problem. I can go back to when I was a child, and I used to put Pinocchio on. Literally, I would take the VHS out, I would put it back in, I would rewind it, and I would play it again throughout the entire day. My mother tells me about it, like Lion King, all of the Disney movies.
Yeah.
So there were signs at a very early age
that you were going to become addicted to anything.
Engage in repetitive, compulsive behaviors. And of course, it was a Disney movie. But even music. I find a good song that I like. I Am the Guy.
Put that on repeat.
Put it on repeat like 5 or 6 times.
Amen.
Let me ensure that I remember every single word of that song.
Yeah.
Then my wife hates it after 2 days. But it's in me. There are things in me where it's like, I like that. I want more of it.
100%.
And it's just, I need to be aware of those things.
That is something I often find myself doing.
You're
like
a repeat guy?
Oh, I am such a repeat guy. I
love it.
A song repeat guy.
You gotta be careful.
My wife does the same thing. If I play a song like 30 times,
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. But also like, I find it so often. It happens a lot I do like music production. I play drums. I play baseball. And every time when I get started on doing something, it's like, that is my life for a little bit.
Yeah.
Like, that is what I'm going to hone in on, and I'm going to find it. Like, that's what I'm going to do. It's like a
rut, and like you're in it. Like,
exactly.
Like you don't really have any interest in even getting out of it.
Yeah. It's just like, that's what I'm going to do for a while. That's what I'm going to put 100% of my time and effort into. And then, okay, this is starting to cause a problem. Let me pull that off and move to the next thing.
Yeah.
Right? It's
Which
always...
dopamine loves, by the way, novelty. It likes to switch things up, So that's good. It's great. It is. Yeah.
Do you have...
Interesting.
Yeah. Do you have any last thoughts or...
No. I mean, I think from a recovery house standpoint and just recovery in general, there's a large misconception, I think, about people in recovery, people who are in recovery homes. And there is this, if we don't understand something, it can come off as intimidating. It can, our brains are we need to predict everything. And if we can't predict something, it puts us into a state of uncomfortability. And, when you have the individual who, lucky for them, they never had substance use issues with them or even in their family. Like, they really don't know people who have suffered from substance use, which nowadays that's such a rare thing. But that it doesn't surprise me that person finds people in very early recovery intimidating, or untrustworthy, or anything like that. I mean, I guess just if you talk to them, in fact, I would make the argument that there's probably many people, you go out on a vacation, you go to a grocery store, you open up a conversation with somebody, and this is just going to continue to happen. There is a chance that person you are engaging with is actively in recovery. Mm-hmm. And you have no idea.
Oh, yeah.
So most of us are normal people. that normal. Whatever that is. But we're not like aliens. Most of the time you can have an intelligent conversation with us. We can provide, insightful, useful information, and you can walk away from that conversation having no idea that you were just engaging with somebody who 10 years prior, used heroin every single day, because it's not my life. I don't even really identify as a, drug addict, alcoholic. I am when I use drugs, I'm a raging drug addict. When I drink, I am an alcoholic, but I'm 10 years removed from that. I'm Adam. I'm a human. I'm a husband. I'm a son. I'm so many other fantastic things that just have nothing to do with an old decade-long coping strategy of mine. So yeah, I'd say that's probably it. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for being here.
Of course.
We definitely had a longer conversation today than I was expecting. So for those listening, the full conversation will be on our YouTube.
Fantastic.
And we'll probably shorten this a little bit for the audio version, but
no worries.
Thank you so much, Adam.
I
Genuinely.
appreciate it. Thank you.
I want to leave with a number. Not the $4.5 million. No, that one is hard to shake. Not the 70% employment rate, because that one should be on a billboard somewhere. I want to leave with this number, 93.1%. That is the percentage of Reverence House residents who arrived with childhood trauma. Not adults who made a bad choice in a vacuum. People who were failed early, repeatedly, systemically, and who are now in a house on a street in Laconia, New Hampshire, doing the hard work of building something back. The NIMB debate treats recovery housing like it's a risk to be managed. The data treats it like it's an investment with a demonstrable return. But the residents of Reverence House, they're not a risk nor an investment. They're people. They have children. They have histories with, as it turns out, a pretty reliable tendency to go buy lemonade from the kids across the street. If this conversation gave you some hard questions or hard thoughts, that's the point. That's what we're trying to do. We're launching with 3 episodes today. This one is both on our YouTube and where you're listening to this. Subscribe and follow so you don't miss what's coming next. Find us at pphnh.org or on socials at pphnh. Better Together is a partnership for public health production. It is written by me, Tessa, and Emma, which is how we have data, jokes, and a sense of style all delivered by me. Our producers are Jonathan Lyle Sexton, Emma Peterson, with technical direction from Tessa Donahue. Thank you for being here, and we'll see you next time.